Sounds like you've been busy.
You know how that goes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sean would have you believe he's always busy.
I don't know how
The kids would say,
Catch up.
No, I heard the floor.
Just with all the
I know
emails
how
and all
it
that's
goes.
going on.
Oh, right,
stairways coming up.
I just
I
assumed.
Same thing in our house.
I'm on, yeah.
You haven't, I said something to my wife one day. I said,
I'm here all week.
Yeah, come on, put space or, you know.
Okay.
Mayor, I love that sweet.
Sir,
Thank you.
You're welcome. For what?
Yep.
We
I
love
like it
everything.
too.
I get welcome.
No, I don't want to say.
He says it before
I
council
was a
really
kid,
starts.
by the time they got to the,
What's the start?
was by the piano living room, where they got the stairway, you could hear one of these,
I wouldn't do
like
anything
4 or
like.
5 steps, you'd hear it.
Wow. Oh, really? I got in on 11.
Nice.
I know better.
I know, isn't it?
What?
What do they do in your house?
Quit.
What do they do in your
I've
project?
been there, I know what it
Rubbing
looks
it in.
like.
What do you have?
It's my pool.
That's your
We're
point.
hopefully gonna get some new garage door.
That's what we're gonna build.
And the guy
Is that
used
the
to
little
come
me?
over and clip, he did our garage.
The new part,
I'll
the
Siding.
gateway part.
All
The garage
glazed?
door, where it
There we
came
go.
down, buckled, and so he's supposed to clip those off.
Oh,
Plus he did our roof, and he's gonna come back and check a couple things
I
on the
kinda missed
roof.
the read, but I tell you.
Just a couple of things that he has to.
Oh.
It takes 5
I
minutes
was
to read
reading
that.
that. Yeah, you go to learn more in the site.
All right, we're underway in about 10 seconds.
Tell Ricky, from the inside, there's a room around it.
Yeah, we could.
3. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for this evening, February 28th, 2023. As usual, before we get underway, we have a local pastor to open us up in prayer. Tonight we have Reverend David Brobston from St. Paul Lutheran opening us up with prayer. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Thanks for having me. Let us pray. Almighty God, 200 years, a long time in our eyes, but a blink of an eye in yours. We give you thanks this night for the history. We thank you for the citizens that grieve the fact that anything has changed in 200 years. And we give you thanks for those who think that we're 200 years behind. We thanks for those who stand on guard for us, our police and our fire. And we thank you for these men and women who guide and lead this city. Help us, Lord, to do what you've called us to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with you. Lead us and guide us every step of the way as we begin the process of entering our next 200 years. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for being our guest this evening.
Thank you.
This meeting's called to order. Let the record show that there's a quorum of council members this evening. However, Mr. Corbett couldn't make it. He contacted me a couple days ago and said he wasn't going to be able to make it. Do we have a motion to excuse him this evening?
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Engel. Second, Mr. Waxler. All in favor of excusing Mr. Corbett from this evening's proceedings, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. We'll see him next time. If you'll stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've reviewed the index minutes for the meeting of February 14th, 2023. Do we have a motion to correct or amend the minutes as they're presented? If not, I'll sign the same. Do we have any liaison meeting requests or reports? Without any, do we have any comments from council? Mr. Mast.
Just a couple quick notes. Last week, on our off week, we had meetings with the Shade Tree Commission and the Parks Board, and I know a good deal of it was covered in the newspaper as far as what's going on, but I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that we were talking about at Parks and Shade Tree, and that was a matter of tree plantings at Eastside Park, 32 trees planted over there, and 16 more at Bronson Park along the walking path. And as you can imagine, Shade Tree Commission, tree folks, they were super excited about that. If you drive out there, you can see how it really does fill in East Side Park and the Bronson Walkway. It's gonna give it a few years and they're gonna look amazing. And then another thing, well, obviously they were to put on your calendar is Clean Up the Parks Day, which will be coming up April 8th. So we'll need to keep that in mind. And the other thing, regarding the Kingsbury playground equipment, and this is something I don't think was mentioned in the beginning. There will be a fence around the equipment. Is that my understanding now?
Yes.
So I thought that, wanted to mention that, because that might allay some of the fears that we had.
Similar to what we put around Bronson Splash Park.
Okay. And that's what we got from Parks and Trees.
One other thing,
Okay.
Yvonne Dale announced that she and her husband are relocating to the suburb of Brunersburg. And she, for that reason, will need to be resigning from the tree commission. She hopes to remain active as kind of an ad hoc member, but very soon I'll be making a recommendation to city council.
Mr. Hancock?
Yeah, I had a resident contact me asking if we could look into a property located at 1122 Laddie. There seem to be some broken windows and some other items that are spread around in the yard. Just want to know if you'd look into it. I do have that contact information I can share with you if need be.
Yeah, please do after council get a hold, give me that contact info,
Okay.
but we'll get somebody out to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Mr. Resty?
Yes, speaking of broken windows, we have the property next door that has the broken windows on it. Has been there for a while. We looking to do anything to inform that it need to do something with the appearance?
Actually, Mr. Uresti, I was gonna request an executive session on that very property. So, I mean, I would just say, stay tuned.
Okay,
And we will let the public know once we can.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Resty. Are any other comments from council? On my desk this evening, I have a new liquor license application from Adnan Asaf, doing business as Sam's Restaurant at 501 West 2nd Street in Defiance, here in Defiance, Ohio. Do we have a request for a hearing on this matter? Right. With that, Eddie?
Take care of it.
Thank you. From the Board of Control, Mayor McCann.
Thank you, President McMaster. So I was gonna mention Yvonne's resignation from the tree commission, and then you all note the white roses at our table. Sorry to have to report to you that over the weekend, we've heard from reliable sources that former council president and longtime community servant Charlie Beard has passed away. Our condolences and prayers go out to his wife Sandy, their children and grandchildren, and as we learn more, we'll let you know more, of course. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The one and only thing I had to touch on tonight was actually an introduction for Jen English, our MS4 coordinator. For several years, the city has been applying for the Smart Community Standards Program through the ICF, which is the Intelligent Communities Forum. The ICF is a global organization that looks at key indicators on whether a city is doing the types of things it needs to compete in a modern market and staying as a modern community. This accomplishment took a lot of years and a lot of partnerships, but because Jen has worked so hard on it, I wanted to give her a chance to come and explain a little bit more about it. So without further ado.
While she approaches the podium, I'll just add that she has worked very hard on this for a very long time, and we've spent some time together on this subject, and it's not just Jen's efforts or the folks here at the city, but I'm sure she'll probably mention the involvement of so many others. Jen,
Yep.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank
Very
you.
proud.
Thanks. I'm proud of Defiance. Todd did a great job covering this, so I'm not gonna take a lot of time, but it was definitely a group effort. So this is really the application that we've been working on. We started doing this in 2019. Is basically trying to tell the story of Defiance, right? So for me, it's a privilege to be able to work on a project like this. We've had, everyone that I've ever worked with on this has been very supportive. Everybody has, been encouraging. and to the point where other division heads and other folks in the city are like, well, whatever, you know, whatever we need to do. So there's a lot of people that really get credit for this. So Defiance is getting recognized as one of 21 global communities that have, you know, self-identified that they want to be progressive, that they want to do this community accelerator program. So I guess, you know, the most important thing I would say is that this really comes back to collaboration. You know, the mayor has said, oh, you need to call this person, you need to talk to this person, you need to include this story. So for example, I think one of the things that really kind of helped push us over the top this year was the Defiance County, the broadband initiative that they've been working on for years, right? I know that's been years in the making, and this year in particular, they took a lot of steps with lit communities. They did there's 6 indicators. So the community engagement piece is really important. So reaching out to the community and getting that information back from the community in order to form a plan is super important, and that's really, so there's 6 indicators, that one of those being engage, connect, which is really the broadband connectivity, workforce development. You know, Erica in her office takes does a lot of really good work in that area, innovation, inclusion, and then sustainability. So I can talk a little bit about some of the water projects that I've worked on, but most of you are familiar with those. You know, there's the job creation and the workforce development and the numbers that we put in there of new jobs that are being created. Those are things that the county is initiating. So, you know, the county gets a lot of credit for that. We're working with Defiance College on the research aspect of water quality. The Smart Watershed project that we're doing is really gets a lot of credit from the folks at the water treatment plant. They put in the real-time monitoring equipment and have data that can help them manage the reservoir better. Adam's been talking about that, I think, since I started. So, I mean, that's definitely just another example of, you know, the group effort. Conservation Kick is a program that we worked with Soil and Water District. That was, we got funding from the Great Lakes Commission, and we worked with the staff at the Conservation District and then landowners, you know, out in the county. My big initiative, I guess, is the Land to Lake program, and it's really about protecting the Maumee River. And it comes back to, you know, the job that we're doing here, which is providing drinking water for, what, 20,000? Give or take a few. So yeah, I really don't have a lot of other, I'd be glad to share the application with you. I'd be glad for you to get involved in it because we'll keep doing this. The next step is a conference in June. I'm not sure if we'll attend or not, but they'll take 21 communities, narrow that down to 7, and then from the Smart 7, they'll go to the most intelligent community, of which we've had a lot of support and a lot of encouragement from Central Ohio. Columbus was named the most intelligent community probably
years ago.
Yeah, five or so years ago. So they've given us a lot of support, and yeah, so I'd be glad to take questions or comments.
Do we have any questions or comments?
Nice job.
Good job.
Good job.
Yeah. Well, it's an opportunity, you know, for Defiance, I think, to be able to market itself. You mentioned that in the article. Really to be able to say, here's a distinction that not only have we been aspiring to this for a while, but we've been recognized, and it's on a pretty big stage. So what we do with it next, I think, is really important.
Thanks for getting us this far.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting us
Yep,
this far.
we'll need a little bit more participation to get to that top 7 and the top, you know, the number 1. There are 2 counties, I think, that went together and applied. So this is really not just about the city, right? We've always kind of been intentionally vague about Defiance City versus the Defiance community. So I guess I would just leave you with that. I'll have Lisa share a couple things, but I did want to put a plug in for the next way that we're trying to engage the community, which is Riverfest. So we've got that planned. Save the date for June 24th. So that's our way of getting folks out on the water. Hopefully Mayor McCann will be driving the boat again for us. I'm pretty sure it's on your calendar.
We're also trying to engage them. Great segue, Jen, into going to the new website on the homepage,
Yes.
clicking on the Notify Me button, and getting themselves signed up for notifications.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I didn't think to mention, but that is one of them. The comprehensive plan that we're doing, the makerspace at the library, the work that they're doing at the Dream Center. Those are not necessarily city initiatives, but they're things that are happening around the community. So thanks
When they have
for,
that kayaking and all that kind of stuff going on.
yeah, the kayaks will be there, the pontoon boat will be
Right.
there, a lot of other cool events. So
Kayaking
stay
buddies.
tuned and we'll get you more information about that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dad.
And that's all I have, Mr. President.
I should,
Good news though.
should have probably mentioned, Mr. President, that Lisa Weiner will be here next week to talk to council and all of us about the spay-neuter program that we've enlisted in, and well, that's really it. She'll be here at 7 o'clock.
That's always good.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Unless you're a cat.
Yeah. That's not good at all.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request an executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. I'm not allowed to identify the property right now, but it's under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G2.
We have a request for an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Engel, motion. Mr. Mass, second.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Crutch.
Yes.
So before we adjourn this evening, we have an executive session. Anything else, Mr. O'Donnell?
One more thing, Mr. President. 4 years ago, in July of 2019, council increased the threshold for approval of contracts from in excess of $15,000 to in excess of $25,000. And we just had Pastor Brobston talking about the world of change. And I think that's appropriate because since that time, since you passed that ordinance, inflation has increased approximately or over 14%, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. The costs that we are experiencing are ever increasing. Inflation is still rising. What the Federal Reserve calls the Personal Consumption Expenditure Index has actually accelerated even since the beginning of this year. So whatever the news agencies are telling you, inflation is still very much in force. And that's just since the end of December. And so what does this mean for you and for us as a city? We're seeing these costs increase in everything from water treatment chemicals, which are critical, and water pollution control chemicals, to labor and materials and construction projects. We're seeing change orders in these projects. We're seeing increases in software licenses and updates and web design services that were unexpected. Even lawsuit settlement amounts are affected, and I can attest to that. We recently brought legislation to you for some of the geospatial surveying equipment for the engineering division. I believe, Mr. Hancock, you had some questions on that. Frankly, we had never done that before. We had never brought anything like that to you before as in ordinance form. And I have to think part of it is because of the inflation. As you recall, the city purchased that equipment for a little over $33,000. 10 years ago, when we last purchased that equipment, it was $12,000. And then tonight, Mr. Mack will present a roof repair replacement ordinance for our armory building. It's where we house the Head Start preschool. When you may recall during budget time, it was we expected it based on the quote to be $28,000. He's going to ask you for $60,250. And then you probably recall last year the EMS squad that we attempted to purchase last January for $268,000, a little over that. And then after the 30 days had elapsed, when we tried to execute the contract with the vendor said, no, I can't do it, but for maybe 10 or 15% more. We had to go back and start all over. I can give you more examples of this that's happening, but I'll be respectful of your time. I would recommend taking a serious look at raising that threshold, the $25,000, in excess of $25,000 threshold. The Ohio Revised Code threshold in 735.05 is $50,000. And my reason is twofold. You're going to start seeing a lot more ordinances for smaller day-to-day expenditures that have more to do with running the city government than the capital expenditures than you probably, some of your long-serving members are probably used to seeing. You're gonna see things like engineering, service equipment, software, fuel purchases. Fuel purchases are getting up there if you're hearing Mrs. Sprague's reports. You know, it's one thing to be here past 8:30 to have a spirited debate on South Clinton Street sidewalks and something like that. But if you're here past 8:30 for just the reading and not even any debate on an ordinance for toner for the, you know, law director or the accounts payable clerk, you're probably not gonna be happy. I'm here all week, I can do those, I've got the templates, I can do that legislation, but it may not be what your constituents are demanding of you. And the opportunity cost of your time, all the time you spend on that is time taken away from the bigger questions. But I mean, that's something you'll have to decide as legislatures, but that's probably where we are heading based on the rate of inflation. Almost all the capital improvements, the roof replacements, construction projects, even the annual sidewalk repair maintenance, we're budgeting 50,000 or more anyway. It's just the environment we're in. And then, you know, some policy considerations. That's the second reason is, you know, the mayoral administration, staff, us, you, city council, we get along pretty well. I mean, things are pretty cordial, professional. Some of you know it hasn't always been that way. And if the threshold's too low, what you're doing is giving maybe one or two either members of the administration or vice versa on council, one or two members of council, the option or the opportunity really to check or to a veto, if you will, over the day-to-day operations of the city. That may not be in the interest of your constituents to have them constantly holding up bills. Again, I don't know if they would, but it gives them that opportunity. So we're asking your consideration to raise that ordinance threshold because at this rate, it only looks like things are going to get worse in terms of pricing. You're probably going to see some supplemental appropriations. You're going to see, I mean, water chemicals are going up, so you can draw your own conclusions. And then, you know, the other reason I bring this effort is, bring up this is you will better understand some of the struggles that your division heads are facing, that our division heads are facing in their procurement efforts. They are real. They're calling me about them. They're calling me about the competitive bidding struggles. They're only getting one, if that, one bidder. And I would say hardly any capital projects that are coming in at under 50,000. So, yeah, I'll just leave that for your consideration. But I thought you might benefit from what we're seeing on the ground.
Thank you. Mr. Engel.
Yep, that being said, what Sean was saying, I don't think there's be a problem with me. I mean, I don't know what other council people think if we could raise that $25,000-$30,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood with everything, with inflation the way it is. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think we'd be smart in doing that, at least that.
Mr. Rusty.
I support that, whether it be 25 or 30,000. The thing that comes down to it is that occupying your time, basically bringing things before us. If we can expedite that, that's great. The only thing that I would probably say is that we keep the notifications as we had before, and to me that's okay. Because if I have a question, then we could always come back on that. So kind of the trade-off on those two, but I think it's good. It'd be good legislation, and I would propose that we make a motion to basically bring that forward.
Before we hit the motion question, Mr. Mast.
Is there as opposed to a blanket feeling on this, is there any way to categorize expenditures so that we know, I mean, if there's anything that does need to come before us?
We actually already do that for water treatment chemicals and certain water pollution control chemicals. What maybe, Mr. Mast, did you have in mind?
I guess just projects, anything that might fall below that maybe is optional versus your standard day-to-day expenditures.
like operational
Well,
expenses.
you're saying you don't need to see the toner,
Right.
but if
And
there's
and
a
I don't
change
understand
order
materials
to
for-
something significant, then you would like, which I agree, you would,
Yeah.
but you don't need to approve the daily
day-to-day,
functions. I mean, that is a waste of,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, I
what
agree
your
with that,
purpose is,
absolutely.
yeah.
I think what Mr. Uresti was proposing, and Mrs. Crutch nodded her head as well, is that we continue the policy, and Mrs. Sprague will tell you about a couple here in a moment, of those expenditures that are between the $15,000 and $25,000 range.
You could raise that up to the new limit.
Right, and so we would notify you of any, say we raise that limit, which is what actually Napoleon just did. Raise that limit to $50,000, we would notify you of any expenditure between $15,000 and $50,000 is what we would propose. Now, I will say, Mr. Mass, that when we notify you of those expenditures, that money has already been expended. So it's more of a notification, this is what we spend. And obviously at that time you question the logic in that expenditure, but as far as us pulling it back, it's too late for that.
And that's fine with budgeted items. I mean, we know they're there, we know they're gonna get spent, so
Right.
that's, I'm just talking maybe the surprises or
Yeah.
project capital that needs to be spent.
Your question is right on point, because, I mean, that's why I'm raising the concern is we're getting more into the operational side of things, you know, whether the engineering technicians can go out and survey.
Right.
Than your vehicles, squads, things like that, capital improvements, things like that.
I'm trying to think of some of those things.
If you look up here on the screen, council, this is in your Dropbox too. It's under the purchase orders.
They get,
Yep,
goes
that is
out.
in your Dropbox weekly. Sometimes there's two
Okay.
in there weekly.
So that's got,
That's got that up there, and then another one that would fall under it, I believe, is that one as well. So everything that she comes in the reading, it's in their Dropbox. I have it all in their Dropbox. I get that weekly.
You know, some of the things that purchases that would run under that 50 that, you know, we've talked about here in the past might be a tree trimming contract, but not normally. They tend to run more than that. If we were gonna purchase, say, 2 zero-turn mowers at once, they're not gonna be over the $25,000 range generally.
The annual sidewalk repair maintenance, I looked that up.
Can you hear that?
It used to be, some years, we never did an ordinance since 2019. And last year, it was about 42 or 44. This year, we're budgeting 50, and it's anyone's guess whether we're gonna get it for less than 50. I doubt it.
yeah.
So to me, that was a good example of one that sometimes we didn't do an ordinance for. But that's a good gauge, I think, of where these capital expenditures are heading. They're all heading north.
Mr. Waxler?
Yeah, I don't have a problem, but on the other side of that, I mean, I think it's right that we let the people, the taxpayers, know what we're spending. And, if you, like the mayor just said, you're gonna spend it and then come and tell us. That's my only flaw with it.
I will say, every dime we spend here is available to the taxpayers at, I can't think what that state
checkbook.
state checkbook. To the best of our knowledge, few people ever access that to look at it. In fact, there was some question whether we would continue with that.
So what is the setting you wanted to set it at?
$50,000 for ordinancing, anything, and then we would notify you for every expenditure, like Mrs. Sprague will do here in a minute, which Mr. Leonard used to do, or somebody used to do.
That's above that, correct?
15 to 25. We will
But it's
notify,
still gonna be-
15 to 50, excuse me,
Anything over 50.
would be an ordinance.
It's an ordinance.
So you're saying if anything over 50 has to come to council?
Yeah,
If anything under, between 15 and 50, we will still talk about it on Tuesday nights.
that's correct.
Yes.
But their end's already spent when we talk
Correct.
about it,
Right.
Yes.
so.
And Mrs. Crutch?
I was just asking the same question, so.
Okay. And so if we are done with questions, we had a motion, and this would be a motion to amend the current ordinance, raising the limit to, from 25 to 50,000 before it would come to an ordinance.
Yes,
So we
with
have some
notifications.
notifications.
Is that the 50,000 you say? Okay,
So we have that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have that second. Mr. Engel?
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Crutch.
Yes.
Bring this such an ordinance for consideration.
I will do so. I think, with that, I think I've spoken long enough.
I agree. Thank you. For now, thank you. And Ms. Sprague?
I actually don't have any to bring to you tonight, ironically enough, but, so I don't have much to say, but I do wanna let you know that probably the last week and a half, I've been, going with Ryan out to meet with the division heads, which has been great to get to know. It's important to me to know how things work. I won't ever probably wrap my head around a lot of it, cause it's way above my level, but, it's good to go out and meet people, understand what they do, understand their frustrations, you know, what they've got accomplished, what they want to accomplish. So we're still in the process of doing that, but that's been great. And then to tie that into the budget, and then when we spend more than what we had allotted, I can piece together why. It was always really important to me at Paulding to understand, you know, just why we needed the things that we did in the classroom, or you know, whatever the case may be, with the busing or whatnot. So, you know, we're making that a high priority to get to know everybody, and they're really the ones that are making things happen, you know. So I'm greatly appreciative of, and everybody's been great, very accepting. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Yes.
Who doesn't? But we do have 3 items of legislation for consideration this evening. Would you read the caption for the first?
First reading by caption only, an ordinance establishing a job creation incentive program for a packing group, Ohio, Inc.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. A Packaging Group of Ohio recently opened and began operating their packaging plant on East Commerce Drive last year. And they're attempting to build up to what they think they can achieve of 135 new full-time positions over the next 2 years. And they would bring an aggregate new payroll of $8.125 million annually to the city. So if you look on the chart, the maximum that they're requesting, it's actually very close to the maximum. They are requesting an incentive of $58,500 per year back from the income taxes they will be providing. They're asking for that per year for the next 15 years. And as required by ordinance, the Job Creation Incentive Program Committee met 2 Fridays ago, on February 17th, and passed a resolution recommending this award to this company. And it is, I would note, it is a $78.5 million investment in property that's part of the Defiance Harmon Industrial Park, and that will help us with the payback on that TIF district. So that's very good news. I'm here to tell you it complies with Section 191.04 of our codified ordinances, and council approval will allow this award to take effect in 30 days. I will note that Ms. Erica Willitzer is here to supplement any information that I missed and answer any questions you have.
Got it all right.
Even the address this time, huh? Very good. That's all I have.
Well, thank you. Mr. Waxler?
What will that, put annually back into our TIF? Do you have any idea on how that's gonna work?
We can get the answer for you, do the calculation, get the answer for you.
I would just be curious as to what that does with that amount.
We knew if another project similar to APAC came to us, that it would get us to a break-even state to where the property tax revenues would net out to what our payments are for the debt retirement. We're not quite there when this expansion occurs, but it's gonna bring us a whole lot closer.
And when does he have to have the 135 jobs?
2 years.
And that's for 15 from there out, or how many years is it? Is it once he gets there, he gotta maintain that?
Yeah.
So you can, if they, at 2 years, they don't get it, they just don't get the award. But
Okay.
then in year 3, they hit it, then they'll get the award.
Okay, that was my question. If they
Yes.
don't hit it, they don't get it. They gotta have that.
They have to hit
But
that.
that's in 2 years.
Yeah, but then, let's say after that, they don't get it, they'll pass the year, and then if that next year they get it, then they'll get that
And
award.
now just go out for 15 years after that. It don't just keep adding on because he didn't or did make it.
Right, it's good, yeah.
Okay,
And actually, as a matter of record, he's a she.
what? Well, I'm just saying, I should have said they. No, I mean, I'm just, yeah.
It's Helga Armanack, and she's
Okay, yeah.
charming. Charming.
Good question. Mr. Rusty,
No questions, motion to suspend and call.
if we have no further questions, we have a motion to suspend and call Mr. Rusty. Second, Mr. Waxler.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty.
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
and Ms. Tringle.
Yes.
Motion adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Hancock. Second, Mr. Engel.
Mr. Hancock,
Yes.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing contract for the repair and replacement of the Army building roof and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is an emergency ordinance for the Armory Building roof replacement. The roof on the Armory Building, 644 Clinton Street, is leaking badly. This is a project that was budgeted for, but because of general cost increases and the need for additional work now, the price has gone up. Because the concern over new leaks getting worse and its ongoing use for the Head Start program, we are asking council to invoke ORC 735.051 and declare it a real and present emergency so that we can accept the quote of $60,250. Currently, well, not currently, when it's raining, we have 2 large barrels collecting water as the roof itself leaks into the building. Bubbling has begun on some of the paint up by the ceiling, so we wanna get to this.
Thank you. Mr. Waxley.
The current bid was 28,000, so I heard, or the original quote.
The original,
And that was actually a quote last summer
Yes.
sometime.
correct,
Okay, what do we put in the budget for?
28,000.
So where's the excess
There
coming
was a
from?
contingency built in that we hadn't.
A contingency, we'll be using the contingency
Yes,
fund.
we're using the contingency to pay the difference.
Mr. Hancock.
And the 60 is just for the roof itself, or is this for the additional work that needs to be done from the damage of the water?
So what they're going to do is completely peel back the old one, peeled off, and actually inspect inside to make sure that there's no real structural damage. We don't think there is because the leak seems to be new, the 2 leaks. But we want to make sure.
So
And
we still have the
and then-
unknown.
Yeah, then totally put in, put a new roof over top of it.
I think that's an important point, Mr. Hancock. There could be some hidden damage that we're gonna be coming back to you and making you aware of, but that's not what we anticipate, but
We just fixed up the exterior. We did tuck point to the brickwork. We spent some money doing that. We don't want to leave that issue there with the roof hanging out too long, so.
Mr. Waxler.
No further question, we'll suspend the call.
We have a motion to suspend and call.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Crutch.
Mr. Rusty,
Yes.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Waxler,
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch,
Yes.
Mr. Engel,
Yes.
and Mr. Hancock.
Yes.
Motion adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mast.
Mr. Mass,
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
With that, this ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance vacating the right-of-ways between 49 and 50, 51 and 52, and 61 through 64 of the Williamstown Addition, portions of Broadway Avenue and Ralston Avenue, and between 42 of Holgate Addition to North Defiance and Lot 16 in the addition auditor's plat of lots north of the Maumee River.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Mr. President, the owner of the parcel surrounding the proposed vacated rights-of-way, I don't know if we can get that up on the screen there, is Arps Dairy Incorporated. They are asking that you will vacate all these 5 rights-of-way. This is left over from Ralston, left over from Broadway. Some of these ordinances, we do have record of them being vacated. However, we've had floods in some of our storage facilities. We can't find the old ordinances, and unfortunately, they've never been recorded. Others, they call them alley closed, and we don't know what closed meant back then in 1813. So to be safe, we recommended that they petition for the right-of-way vacation. Section 905.19A lays out the process for the vacation of the right-of-way. The city engineer, she examined this and determined that there are no public utilities, public or private utilities, on any of these rights-of-way. Last week, the City Planning Commission voted to recommend vacation of these rights-of-way at its February 21st meeting. So now it is before you to determine whether there is good cause to vacate them. And I would remind you, I know you all know this, but section 905.19A4 does require 3 full readings before final passage. And therefore, motion to suspend the rules and call the question would not be lawful tonight. But your options are, you could move to refer to the bill to a designated member or liaison. You could move to table consideration of this bill, or you could move to let consideration of this bill lay. And should you choose to let the matter lay, then the clerk would automatically place the item on the agenda at our next regular meeting on March 7th.
Mr. Wexler.
I make a motion to let lie, please.
We have a motion to let lay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel. All in favor of letting this issue lay until we can read it a second time, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we will let this issue lay and pick it up next time. With that, the items of legislation have been addressed for this evening. Are there any citizens' concerns? Mr. Rusty.
Is it possible for us to take a moment, I'll stand in memory of Mr. Beard?
I think it would be quite appropriate, yeah.
Great leader, and at your, whenever you want to adjourn it.
All right. Thank you. And before we adjourn for this evening, we do have an executive session, but we will take a moment to reflect for a moment on what Mr. Beard provided for the city of Defiance for, 30 seconds of silence. And thank you, Mayor McCann, for providing the flowers. Before we adjourn for this evening, we do have an executive session